Hey guys, Tanya with Delilah Design, and I'm doing a little furniture painting today, and I'm working on the side of this little washstand. I'll show you in a second, but I thought I'd pop on here and show you guys what I'm working on. Let me show you. I'm using a couple different colors, and let me see if I can get this moved. Okay, so this is Opulence Paint Couture. It's a really beautiful green. I love this color so much. I think it's probably my favorite color, honestly. But yeah, it's called Opulence. So I have painted the whole side, and I'm gonna actually add some black on the bottom and kind of feather it up a little bit. And I'm going to use Baltic Black Paint Couture also. But I just thought I would just pop on here since I'm hanging out and painting. I'd hang out with you guys and paint also. Okay, so I'm just going to add a little bit of a light mist of water just to allow my paint to kind of go on smooth. And I'm using out of the can because I only have a little bit of paint in there, so I'm trying to milk it all and get it all out of there. But I want this piece, like I said, I'm going to add black a little bit on the bottom, and then I'm going to add a little dark gray and then some white. I've already done the front like that, and I kind of like the way it turned out. It's a little bit, I'd say, kind of like moody, almost like a dark forest. So that's kind of what I was going for. So anyway, I'll get started. So I just did a little spray, and I'm gonna just get the black on and kind of just feather it up a little bit, make it pretty solid down at the bottom. And when you have a little ridge like this, what I do is I just go ahead and paint the ridge area, and then I just pull from that ridge. Because those kind of make this, sometimes they can make it a little tricky, but if you do that, you just pull that paint up, and then it's no big deal. Let's see, I need a little more black. Hopefully I have enough in here. I have more over there if I need it, but you know how it is. You want to use all of your paint. Don't waste any paint. It's like gold, right? So, okay, let me just get this on here on the bottom real quick. So, like I said, this is Opulence. The green is Opulence. Which, don't you love that name? It's such a pretty name. Ooh, yeah, it's getting low in there. I'm going to do this little trick and spray a little water in there. And do y'all milk your paint too? Like you get every little bit out? I totally do. Okay, so, and then don't forget your inside of your legs. Okay, so then I'm just going to kind of pull it up on the side. I'm going to spray this a little more. And then just going to come up on this little lip a little bit on this, on the side part. That's probably it for the black. When this dries, it kind of looks like a deep green, like a really dark green. Yeah, I like the way. I'll show you the front maybe if it's not too disruptive on the camera. Okay, so then next on the front, I added some gray. I mixed up a dark gray. Well, actually, it's shell stone, and I added a little white to it to make it a little bit lighter. So let me see which brush I was using with that. I think this one. I'm just gonna kind of feather that in here a little bit. Just let it run down. I'm kind of just playing with this piece. I started just with the green, but then I wanted to add a little more variation and mix it up a little, give it a little more depth. So that's when I added the black and then the gray. Just gonna kind of just pull that down a little. And I'll let that dry, and I'll probably layer on a little more. Hey, how are you? Thanks for watching. Let's see. I should have mixed up more because I need a little more gray. But you know, the simplest way to make gray is just you mix your black and white together, right? So let me just do that real quick. If I have any more black in here, I just need a little bit more. Have you guys ever used these little paint things? You get them from the Dollar Tree, I think. They're awesome for paint. I love them. They're like little paint palettes. So I use them to mix up my paint while if I need to, or if I need to water down the paint or something. Okay, so yeah, okay, I'm liking that. My brush is pretty wet. It's actually dripping, but that's kind of, I wanted that because I want this to, I don't want full coverage. I kind of want it to be, like I want to be able to see the green underneath still a little bit. And I think I'm gonna feather in a little black up there too. Because I like that variation with the light gray and then this black over it. It looks a little weird now, but it'll kind of all come together in the end. And once it dries, everything kind of softens a little. I just play with it until I like it, really. That's why it's so hard to teach, because I don't know, I just kind of make it up as I go. try stuff, and if it works, cool. If not, you can always fix it, you know. But it's a fun way to learn, just to play with it. So probably what I will do with this is I'll let this dry, and once it's dry, I'll feather in some more opulence, like right here, to kind of make it look a little more like cohesive. But okay, so I'll show you guys the front. I'm sorry, I'm going to move the camera, just so you kind of see what we're doing here. Can you see the front? Yeah. So it's, you know, it's kind of, like I said before, it's kind of dark and moody, but I kind of like it. And I'm going to add this transfer, Astoria foliage. It's got some florals and some kind of bohemian pieces down at the bottom, and I think that'll look pretty cool. I'm gonna add a little more gray in here, but I'm pretty much kind of done with it. I'm gonna add a little more. I'm gonna make the details pop a little. And I'm going to start with a little bit of dry brushing. I'm going to start with the green, which is Opulence by Paint Couture. So I'm putting a little bit on my brush, and then offloading it a bit on this cardboard. And I'm just going to go in and dry brush in some areas. I'm essentially just using the little bit of paint that's left on my brush to just brush it onto the surface and move it around a little bit. Let's see. And then when that gets kind of dry, I get a little more paint. I don't want this to be so symmetrical down here, so I'm going to add a little more. I want it to be more random. And when I want to apply more paint, I press harder with the brush. Okay, I think that's good for now. And next I'm going to do the same thing with Shellstone, which is it's kind of a dark gray, charcoal gray by Paint Couture. And I'm gonna just kind of add that. Honestly, like I'm just playing around with this piece and just kind of going with the flow and doing what I feel like I like. I don't really have like a big, design plan in mind. I'm just kind of messing around with it and seeing where it goes, which is fun and scary at the same time. So I want to soften the black a little bit. I'm going to make these, I'm going to cover these up here. Just flipping up my brush to create this kind of ombre pattern. Let's see. Okay. Okay, I'm going to let this layer dry, and then I'm going to come back and add some probably white, I'm thinking, um, and some more green, but I'm going to let this dry. Okay, guys, so this is my third coat on the side here. I'm just using my palette knife. It's a stiff palette knife, and I'm just scraping to reveal some of the bright green that is my base coat on this piece. And you'll see more of this in the video later on, and you'll see some close-ups of that. But that's all I'm doing right here is I'm just trying to expose some of that bright green under layer. I'm just pressing with my fingers on top of it, and you just have to make sure that your base coat is really solid and has adhered really well. Otherwise, you will expose the wood, which I do in a couple of spots, and that's fine. But I primarily wanted the bright green to show through. So what I did is I applied a coat of bright green, and it's a custom mix that I made. And then once that dried, I applied a coat of dead flat couture top coat. So that made the bright green really durable and protected. So that way, when I distress like this, I know that that green is going to come through and it's not going to go all the way to the wood unless I want to apply more pressure and like some of the edges and places like that, I do apply more pressure because I want the wood grain to show. I continue to scrape on the middle and lower area of the piece. And as you can see, the green is popping through a little bit. But I just continue this technique pretty much over all of the green areas, and then I go into the little inset areas a little bit. But it's just to give your piece a little texture and some more interest. And when you're close up to the piece, this really comes through and makes your finish just have more texture. Okay guys, in this next step, I'm going to be using a stiff palette knife to add some texture on top of this layer. I am basically just putting a little bit of paint on the end of the knife, and I'm laying my knife flat onto the surface and getting a little coat of paint on there, or a little bit of paint. And then I'm going to use my fine mist sprayer and spray it with water to get a drippy effect. And I just continue to add a little more across that little lip there on this section of the piece. And I'm just spraying both of those spots again to get a little more dripping. I use my palette knife very lightly to kind of encourage some dripping. I really like the drips. It just creates a texture over this layer. And you don't want to put too much water so that your paint, becomes too translucent. So it's kind of you kind of just have to get used to how much water you need to apply. And I'm just using my palette knife to kind of pull that paint that has gathered on that little lip there to create some drips on the bottom. And I'll give that a little spray to get them to break up the lines. I don't want the lines to look as like straight. And you do want to have a paper towel with you just to kind of clean your knife off a little bit every now and then. And here I'm just adding randomly, I'm adding some patches of color, and I will use my knife to work those into the texture that I've created on the other two layers. So I'm just kind of lightly kind of scrubbing the knife over those areas, and it kind of presses the paint into those textures, and it kind of makes it look like the paint is coming up from the surface and that it's worn over time. Just clean your knife off every now and then, doing a little more spritzing with the water. And I will go over in more detail about how to add these little patches of color. I'm going to add more in white and I think gray. Yeah, I'm pretty much going to do the same thing with white. You don't, well, this is adding the drips, but you don't want too much paint on your knife. I'm just using my knife to smooth out the top and then also to pull the paint over into the other section. It's still wet over there, so that's going to help the paint kind of drip. And just adding a little more water. Just breaking this up a little bit. And then this will have to dry. And once it dries, it'll look a little more cohesive. So I'm going to start working on the top part, adding some more patches of color, and doing a little more scraping here and there to get that neon green to show through. But yeah, right now I'm just adding a little bit of white. You just need a very little bit of paint. And then just use your palette knife to kind of scrub that color into the texture underneath. And once you try this, you'll kind of see what I mean. But it almost like pushes the paint into the other finish, and it makes it look like this piece was painted different colors. Like the white is kind of showing through from the original layer, like through age. It's a pretty cool effect once it's finished. So I'm just putting a little bit of paint on the end of my knife and pulling it lightly down on the piece, just adding some texture. Um, and I'm gonna just apply the paint in these what I call patches and just random areas. I don't have any kind of systematic plan. I'm just adding it where I think it will look best. So then once I add the paint, I flip my knife over to the side where there's no paint, and I'm just kind of like scrubbing it lightly. So I'm pushing that paint down into the texture that's been created from the other two layers. So you're just kind of scrubbing it, and it pushes it into those layers, and it makes it look like the paint has been there for a while, and maybe those were layers that were revealed over time through normal wear and tear of the piece. And so far that was Arctic White that I added. I clean my palette knife off periodically because I'm just going to work on these, evening out the drips at the top there. And now I'm going to add some patches of British Gray in the same way I added the white. So I just get the paint into random spots, and then I'll go back and kind of scrub them or press them into the textured finish from the other two coats. So this one I'm kind of scrubbing it. Sorry y'all can't see it that well, but I'm just kind of scrubbing it. It wasn't really moving. I think it kind of already dried. I just put like a very small amount. So I sprayed a little paint on it, and that broke it up a little bit and allowed me to kind of press it into the surface and move it around a little more. And I'm just going to continue that same process on the other ones, and kind of just work it until I like the way it looks. It's kind of like a reverse distressing in a way. You're kind of adding the paint to make it look like it's an underneath color. I am kind of using a somewhat light pressure. You don't want to scratch your surface, and I'm still kind of just holding the knife kind of up and down and not cutting into the finish too much. Sometimes I add the white on top of others, or here I'm adding the white over the gray. Now I'm going to add a little bit of lime green. It's a custom color that I mixed up, and it's actually the base coat that I applied the lime green and then the opulence over the top. So I'm just adding it back in random spots again, and doing the same type of like scrubbing it into the texture below. So that's pretty much it. I'm just going to continue to do this same technique with all the little patchy spots, and I did the same thing on both sides and the front of the piece as well. And there probably is a fine balance of like how many would look chaotic and how many little spots like this kind of work. You just kind of have to play around with it and, trust your intuition to get the look that you want. But it's pretty simple technique, and I think it adds a really cool layered effect to your finish. Thank you so much for watching, and to get more detailed tutorials like this one, please don't forget to subscribe and to hit that little bell so you'll be notified of my next video. Thank you.